I still remember the sharp sting of winter air biting my cheeks as I slipped out of the holiday party a few years back, clutching the receipt for the $5,000 worth of Christmas decorations I'd quietly covered. Mom said it was too much for the family budget, I told myself, the lie repeating like a mantra. Meanwhile, inside the warm glow of the living room, Sophia was twirling in her brand new designer dress, the center of every admiring glance. I stood there, invisible in the shadows, the family's invisible backbone yet again. At 38, being the responsible one wasn't a role I chose, but one I was born into. A silent contract I kept renewing through endless hospital shifts and mounting bills. I'm Bridget Collins, a nurse practitioner, a caretaker at work and at home, the one who pays the price, so others don't have to. My cousin Sophia Flores, with her effortless charm and the kind of smile that disarms even my father, Edward Collins, had been the golden child since forever. Dad watched, arms folded but silent, letting the favoritism unfold like a play he didn't want to interrupt. I sensed something was off, always did, but I shrugged it off, telling myself family meant sacrifice. How much longer could I keep this up before the weight cracked my back? That question haunted me in the quiet moments between shifts, the invisible labor I carried like a secret badge, the glue holding us all together even as it threatened to dissolve me. Memories of childhood flicker like faded photographs when I close my eyes, especially the one from when I was 12, Dad beaming with pride over Marcus's school award, while I held my perfect report card in my trembling hands, barely acknowledged. Gina's words from that day echoed in my head. You're just the responsible one. That's your place. Sophia, 2 years older and already mastering the art of winning hearts, basked in lavish praise and gifts for minor accomplishments. She was the family's darling, the star everyone rallied around, while I was the shadow blending into the wallpaper, expected to support without a sound of complaint. Birthdays, holidays, funerals, every event underscored the same pattern. Sophia shone, and I faded. I learned to swallow my resentment, rationalizing it as family dynamics, a survival strategy woven into my identity. Behind my quiet endurance, I craved something deeper than approval. I wanted to be loved. Instead, I became useful, the one who carried emotional burdens no one else noticed. This unspoken role shaped me, bending me but never breaking, until the cracks began to show beneath the surface. Over the past decade, my sacrifices have piled up like a mountain no one else seemed to notice. I've poured over $150,000 into Marcus's college tuition, watched my savings dwindle paying Sophia's rent for 2 years, $2,000 a month she never bothered to repay, and kept the family's health insurance premiums afloat at $6,000 annually. All the while, I put my dreams on hold, postponing buying a home because supporting them came first. Sophia flaunted her lavish vacations and designer wardrobes at every family gathering, oblivious or indifferent to the invisible toll she extracted. Liam Turner, my fiancé and quiet rock, has been the only one who truly sees me. He notices the ledgers and calendars I keep hidden, detailed records of every payment, every favor, every sacrifice. He gently pushes me to set boundaries, reminding me I'm worth more than this relentless giving. His support is a lifeline in the storm of family dysfunction, a whisper of hope that maybe, just maybe, I can reclaim some dignity. Meanwhile, Dad remains distant, a passive enabler letting Sophia's manipulations flourish unchecked. I'm caught in a web of silent demands, my quiet strength both a shield and a chain. The summer barbecue was the breaking point, though I didn't realize it at the time. Surrounded by relatives under a harsh sun, I dared to bring up shared expenses, carefully hinting at the burden I'd been carrying alone. Sophia's smirk cut through the warmth like ice. Oh, Bridget, you always think money is the answer. Maybe if you smiled more instead of counting pennies, people would like you better, she said loudly, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. Laughter erupted like wildfire from the guests. Dad shifted uncomfortably but stayed silent. Marcus looked away, embarrassed. My cheeks burned with humiliation, the sting sharper than the summer heat. I forced a polite smile, telling myself, they don't mean it. But the words hung heavy in the air, a public dismissal of everything I'd done. I buried the hurt deep, rationalizing the slight as ignorance, a family quirk. Yet, beneath the surface, a seed of doubt took root. Could I keep being the invisible punching bag? That night, as I lay awake, the laughter echoed in my mind, a cruel reminder that respect and gratitude were luxuries I wasn't allowed. The balance had shifted, and I knew, without fully understanding how, that things were about to change. I thought my small act of resistance, the quiet refusal to cover Sophia's latest emergency bill, would pass unnoticed, a faint ripple in the family pond. Instead, it unleashed a storm. Almost overnight, whispers began swirling around me like smoke, thick and choking. I heard from distant cousins that I was too demanding, jealous, and trying to control everything. It wasn't just idle gossip. Messages landed on my phone from friends I hadn't seen in years, gently probing if I'd lost my mind. Even those closest began to pull away, subtly questioning my motives. Liam noticed it first. His brow furrowed as he read a text from Marcus calling me dramatic and a problem. I felt my foundation cracking, the walls I'd built of quiet endurance crumbling under the weight of invisible attacks. Sophia's gaslighting was insidious. On one of the family group calls, I overheard her whispering to Dad, "Edward, you're making too big a deal out of nothing. Bridget's just stirring trouble again. You don't have to listen to her." His voice, usually firm when we talked privately, was soft and hesitant. I realized then how carefully she'd orchestrated this. Dad was caught in her web of manipulation, his passivity weaponized against me. Even Marcus seemed distant, his usual warmth replaced by a cool politeness that stung more than outright hostility. I tried to reach out during one call, but Sophia cut me off with a sharp laugh. "Oh, Bridget! Always the martyr. You think the world owes you something." The words echoed, cruel and dismissive, and I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. The family dynamic stiffened, conversations becoming taut with unspoken accusations and veiled barbs. At holiday gatherings, I was the outsider looking in. My attempts at connection met with polite nods but no warmth. Flying monkeys, relatives and friends loyal to Sophia, circulated tales painting me as the troublemaker, the one refusing to keep the peace. I could feel the isolation closing in, suffocating and relentless. Even Liam, my steadfast rock, urged caution now. "Bridget, maybe slow down. You don't want to burn bridges before the wedding." His words were well-meaning, but they felt like chains tightening around my resolve. I wanted to fight back, to expose the truth, but I was already so alone. This wasn't a family anymore. It was a battlefield, and I had just stepped onto the front lines. Determined to salvage what little dignity remained, I arranged a family meeting, hoping for a peaceful resolution. Edward agreed to mediate, and for the first time in years, I dared to believe we might bridge the widening gap. I laid out my records carefully, each receipt a testament to years of silent sacrifice. Tuition bills, rent payments, insurance premiums, all numbers etched in my memory like scars. I spoke calmly, trying to keep the hurt from my voice, asking only for acknowledgement and fairness. Sophia sat across from me, her tears welling with practiced innocence, accusing me of unfair attacks and misunderstanding her struggles. Her voice trembled with false vulnerability, a mask I hated but had seen too many times before. Edward tried to stay neutral, his voice weary as he said, "Let's just try to get along for the sake of the family." Our mediator aunt nodded, chiming in with, "These are just family misunderstandings. Let's not make mountains out of molehills." I watched as my concerns were dismissed, the room closing in like a trap. Sophia's smirk was a dagger in my chest, a silent victory in a war I hadn't even started. The meeting ended with a fragile, hollow peace that felt more like surrender. I was left feeling smaller than before, my hope deflated, realizing that the family structure was rotten beneath the surface. No matter how mature or honest I tried to be, the walls were too thick, and the voices too loud. The pre-wedding brunch was supposed to be a celebration, but it turned into another stage for Sophia's cruelty. I caught the tail end of a conversation where she whispered loudly enough for several guests to hear, "Bridget? She's so controlling, always trying to manage everyone. And honestly, who knows how she handles money? I wouldn't trust her with a nickel." The words spread like wildfire, twisting through the crowd. I saw the looks, some sympathetic, some skeptical, others plainly judgmental. A key family friend, someone I'd confided in before, leaned in and murmured, "Is Bridget really the one who's keeping the family afloat? Or is this just her way of making herself look like the hero?" The implications stung deeply, undermining years of quiet labor. My professional reputation, carefully built over years, suddenly felt fragile and exposed. I imagined the whispers reaching my colleagues, tainting the respect I'd earned through sleepless nights and relentless dedication. The humiliation was sharpened by the presence of my own father, who again chose silence over defense. His eyes avoided mine, and my heart clenched with a bitter mix of betrayal and sorrow. I opened my mouth to speak, to set the record straight, but the room's collective siding with Sophia swallowed my words. I withdrew into myself, the laughter and whispers ringing in my ears like a cruel soundtrack. That day, the damage wasn't just emotional. It was real, a fracture in the fragile trust I'd tried so hard to build. Days before the wedding, desperation pushed me to confront Sophia privately. I found her in the quiet corner of a coffee shop, her expression unreadable as I approached. "Sophia," I began, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I need you to stop sabotaging me. This wedding is supposed to be a fresh start for all of us." Her eyes narrowed, the warmth I once thought I saw replaced by cold calculation. "Bridget, you're overreacting," she said smoothly, a venomous edge beneath the surface. "Keep pushing, and I might just expose who you really are. People deserve to know." The threat hung heavy between us, a dark shadow over my hopes. Her tone turned menacing, as if she held the keys to my past mistakes, ready to unleash them at her whim. I realized then that Sophia's cruelty wasn't born of insecurity or jealousy. It was a weapon, wielded with precision to keep me in my place. Any further attempt at peace would only feed her control, giving her more ammunition to destroy me. The line was crossed. The family I'd once hoped to heal was a battleground I was forced to leave behind. I swallowed my fear and sorrow, knowing that from this moment on, survival meant standing my ground, even if it meant standing alone. The aftermath of my attempt to confront the family was nothing short of catastrophic. Sophia's retaliation was swift and merciless. Within hours, she had leaked our private email exchange to half the relatives, twisting my words to paint me as emotionally unstable, someone who couldn't be trusted with the family's delicate matters. The messages spread like wildfire. Screenshots, whispered interpretations, even a few clipped audio snippets from our calls. I watched, numb, as the family I'd tried so hard to protect turned their backs on me one by one. Marcus, my own brother, was the most painful blow. His message was brief but crushing. "You're ruining the family vibe. Stop causing problems." That phrase echoed in my mind, a condemnation that made me question everything I'd ever done for them. Liam sat beside me that night, his hand steady over mine, but even his support felt fragile against the tide of hostility. His eyes were filled with concern, the kind that comes from watching someone you love drown in a sea of rejection. I tried to meet his gaze, searching for a sliver of hope, but the loneliness clawed at my chest like a living thing. Edward, my father, remained silent as ever, a ghost in the background who neither defended me nor acknowledged my pain. His passivity was a cold, bitter reminder that within this family, I had no real ally. The isolation was suffocating. I retreated into myself, withdrawing from calls, texts, and family gatherings. The world outside my small apartment felt distant and hostile, a place where my worth had been erased. I lay awake for nights, the weight of self-doubt pressing down like an unbearable burden. Had I misread everything? Was I the problem, the instigator of this familial collapse? The memories of years spent sacrificing for the family flashed through my mind. Tuition payments, unpaid rents, medical bills I'd quietly shouldered. Was it all for nothing? The ache of invisibility settled deep in my bones, and for the first time, I questioned if I deserved better. Yet beneath the despair, a faint ember of something else flickered. If this was rock bottom, what lay below? I didn't know, but I sensed it was a doorway, a brutal threshold I had been forced to cross. I felt utterly alone, but strangely, the silence around me also gave space for a new kind of clarity, one I wasn't ready to name yet. The day of the wedding arrived like a cruel joke. I was dressed in white, the intricate beadwork heavy on my skin, but inside I felt hollow. Just moments before I was to walk down the aisle, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown family member. The screen revealed a screenshot of a secret conversation, Sophia admitting to hiding a staggering $200,000 debt from the family, siphoning money meant for shared expenses and painting herself as financially sound. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at the words, breath catching in my throat. At the same moment, voices echoed from the reception hall through the cracked door. Sophia's voice rang out loud and cruel, accusing me in front of the guests. "She's the family parasite, bleeding us dry." The sound of her words was a slap. I felt every eye in the room shift toward me, their judgment palpable. Edward stood nearby, his presence a painful void. No defense, no acknowledgement, just that same tired avoidance in his eyes. I wanted to disappear, to scream, to fight, but the humiliation was overwhelming. My chest tightened, my vision blurred with hot tears I refused to shed. In that moment, something inside me shattered, the last of my hope that this family could see me, hear me, value me. But as the shock faded, a cold, fierce clarity took root. I was no longer the invisible caretaker, the quiet sufferer. The woman about to walk down that aisle was not a victim, but a force ready to reclaim her story. "Today, this ends," I whispered to myself, the words a steel blade cutting through years of silence. Backstage, hidden from prying eyes, I forced myself to breathe, to steady the storm raging inside. Memories cascaded, late nights paying bills, the countless times I'd swallowed my anger to maintain peace, the silent tears shed alone in my car after family gatherings. I saw the pattern clearly now. Sophia's calculated manipulation, Edward's resigned passivity, the family's collective blindness to my pain. It wasn't just money. It was my identity erased, my contributions dismissed as expected duties. My anger flared, hot and raw, mingled with a deep, aching sorrow. I thought of every moment I'd been sidelined, every insult disguised as a joke, every glance that ignored my presence. "I will not let them rewrite my story," I vowed, voice trembling but resolute. "I deserve respect." This was no longer about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, making my pain visible. When Liam found me, his calm presence was a balm on my raw edges. I laid out the truth, Sophia's deceit, the betrayal, the years of invisible labor. He listened, his eyes steady and unwavering. "We need a plan," he said quietly. "One that's measured, strategic. We expose the facts, not feelings. We don't stoop to their level." His words grounded me. We talked through every detail, deciding the wedding reception was the perfect stage. Everyone important would be there. No room to ignore the truth. We agreed on dignity above all, letting the evidence speak loud and clear. As he held my hand, I felt the isolation begin to lift, replaced by a fierce sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone in this fight. I began drafting what I would say, carefully choosing words that balanced vulnerability and strength. This moment was mine. No longer the silent backbone, no longer the scapegoat, but a woman ready to shatter the family's facade and demand justice. The long road of sacrifice had brought me here, not to collapse, but to rise. With Liam beside me, I felt the tremor of hope ignite, a promise that the story would finally be told, on my terms. I spent hours poring over bank statements, receipts, and emails, tracing the tangled web of Sophia's financial footprint hidden beneath the family's polished surface. Every lavish dinner, designer handbag, and weekend getaway she flaunted had a shadow, an unaccounted-for payment, or a withdrawal from shared accounts that didn't match her declared income. I pinpointed patterns, transfers from Dad's accounts that lacked clear explanation, payments marked as emergency family support that conveniently covered her mounting debts. The weight of it pressed on me like a stone, but beneath that weight, a cold clarity began to settle. Sophia was not just reckless. She was a parasite feeding on our family's goodwill and resources, all the while playing the victim and darling daughter. I reached out to Henry, a trusted accountant friend, and carefully laid out my findings. He didn't mince words. Sophia's debt is staggering, Bridget. And it's not just hers. Your father's been enabling this for years, quietly funneling money to cover her tracks. If this goes public, it'll shatter the family's financial stability. His confirmation was a shock, but expected. I asked him to help me compile a dossier, bank records, credit card statements, and invoices that told the story Sophia desperately wanted to hide. Next, I turned to the emotional layer, the manipulations and lies she spun to keep her image intact. I discreetly contacted relatives and old family friends who had grown wary of Sophia's behavior, collecting their observations and anecdotes. It wasn't just financial. She weaponized charm and deceit to isolate me, to paint me as unstable and selfish. The list grew long, a litany of gaslighting incidents, subtle sabotages, and betrayals. The inventory I compiled was damning, a detailed exposure of the family's hidden fractures. It revealed not only Sophia's dependencies on Dad's passive enabling, on the family's reputation, but also the vulnerabilities in the family's structure I could exploit. The family's financial safety net was threadbare, and Sophia's influence was built on lies and borrowed money. My quiet endurance until now had been a shield, but now that shield would become a weapon. The knowledge was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. I was poised, for the first time, not just to survive, but to strike back. But knowledge alone wasn't enough. I needed a plan, a way to control the narrative and ensure the truth would land where it mattered most. I wasn't naive. I knew Sophia's charm and cunning could sway many. To win, I had to be precise, patient, and above all, invisible until the right moment. The battlefield was set, and I was ready to map every weakness in their armor. In the days before the wedding, my world became a balancing act between outward grace and inward steel. I smiled and laughed during family gatherings, playing the role of the gracious bride, the family's hopeful healer. But inside, I was calculating, methodical, and resolute. I quietly secured access to the family's financial accounts under the guise of helping coordinate wedding expenses. I made discreet copies of bank statements, credit card bills, and correspondence, digital backups that I stored securely away from prying eyes. Each document felt like a piece of armor, a safeguard against the lies that had suffocated me for so long. I worked closely with Liam, whose steady presence was my anchor in the storm. Together, we arranged for technical support at the reception, microphones, discreet cameras, and a projector that could display incriminating documents and video clips. Our trusted confidant, Mara, helped coordinate the logistics, ensuring that every piece of evidence would be accessible at the exact moment I needed it. The tension was suffocating. Every interaction with Sophia was a careful dance, a mask I wore with practiced ease while my mind raced with contingencies. I caught her glances, those sharp, knowing eyes that sensed something beneath my calm, but she couldn't reach me. Not yet. Outside, the family was blissfully unaware. They rehearsed their roles, unaware that the script was about to be rewritten. My hands trembled only once when I held the wedding invitation, its elegant script mocking the betrayal beneath the smiles. I forced the tremor down and breathed deeply. This was my moment, and I would meet it head-on. The quiet preparation was complete. All that remained was the unveiling. The rehearsal dinner was meant to be a night of celebration, a final gathering before the wedding day. Instead, it became the night everything changed. As I moved through the room, exchanging polite smiles and small talk, my phone vibrated with an urgent message from Henry. I slipped into the corner of the dimly lit room, my heart pounding as I read his words. A newly discovered $200,000 credit card debt in Sophia's name, concealed for years and paid off with borrowed family funds. The sheer scale of it stunned me. This was the missing piece, the secret that explained so much. Henry's message was clear and chilling. Edward authorized these payments, Bridget. He's been complicit, if only passively, in hiding this from the rest of you. If this debt comes to light, it could collapse the family's finances, Marcus's college fund, the shared assets, Everything. My breath caught in my throat as the weight of that knowledge settled. Edward's passivity wasn't just enabling. It was a debt buried under layers of silence and denial, a ticking time bomb threatening everything I'd sacrificed for. The twist sharpened my resolve like a blade. This was no longer just about emotional betrayal or unacknowledged sacrifice. I now had undeniable financial evidence, proof that Sophia's reckless spending was not only draining the family, but that my father had been silently complicit all along. The stakes escalated suddenly, transforming my plan from a personal reckoning into a battle for the family's survival. I pressed my hand to my chest, fighting the surge of anger and betrayal that threatened to overwhelm me. This revelation would shatter their illusions, expose the lies they'd all been living under, and force them to reckon with the truth. I tucked the phone away and stepped back into the room, my face a mask of calm as I greeted guests. But inside, a fire burned. A cold, furious determination to see this through, no matter the cost. The family's facade was cracking, and I held the hammer. Morning arrived with a brittle quiet that felt almost surreal. The wedding day should have been a celebration, filled with joy and hope. Instead, I carried the weight of my plan like a heavy cloak, every movement deliberate and precise. First, I withdrew my financial support from the family's joint accounts. I contacted vendors who handled shared expenses, caterers, florists, the rental company, and informed them that future payments would come directly from Liam's side, bypassing Sophia's interference. It was a small but significant act of defiance, a severing of ties I'd maintained out of loyalty and habit. I blocked Sophia on social media and deleted her from my contacts, a digital boundary that felt both liberating and terrifying. I knew she would notice, but I needed space to move without her watching, without her machinations interfering. The subtle sabotage began to ripple through the family. Sophia, sensing something was wrong, tried to rally sympathy from relatives during breakfast, weaving her usual stories of victimhood and hardship. But the mask was slipping. Some family members exchanged wary glances, their expressions laced with doubt. Whispers circulated. Questions began to surface about her credibility and intentions. I remained composed, careful not to reveal too much too soon. Sophia's attempts to control the narrative faltered as the cracks in her story widened. The family, long blinded by favoritism and habit, started to glimpse the truth beneath the surface. Marcus avoided my gaze, but the tension between us was palpable, a silent acknowledgement of the shifting dynamics. Edward's silence was heavier than ever, an unspoken admission of complicity that hung in the air like a dark cloud. As I watched Sophia struggle to maintain her grip, a strange sense of satisfaction mingled with the ache of loss. This was no longer about peace or acceptance. It was about survival and justice. The first moves were made, the pieces in motion, and for the first time in years, I felt the fragile thrill of control. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The music swelled around me, the clinking of glasses and laughter a jarring soundtrack to the storm inside my chest. As the room buzzed with celebration, voices mingling, the scent of roses and champagne filling the air, I felt the weight of every stolen moment, every unpaid debt, every quiet sacrifice crystallizing into a fierce resolve. When the microphone was passed to me, my fingers brushed its cold metal, steady despite the tremor beneath. I looked out at the sea of familiar faces, friends, family, strangers, each one holding a part of the story I was about to unravel. The chatter hushed, eyes locking on me with curiosity and expectation. I spoke slowly, deliberately, each word a hammer striking the fragile walls of a family secret long buried. "Tonight is meant to be a celebration," I began, voice steady but layered with the ache of years. "But I cannot toast to a future built on silence. There are truths here that need to be spoken." I held up a folder, thick with pages that bore the weight of countless transactions and whispered betrayals. Bank statements showing transfers from my own accounts to Sophia, text messages where she begged for money, receipts for luxuries I never saw, and witness accounts from relatives who'd quietly noticed the cracks in her polished facade. The room shifted. The festive glow flickered under the harsh light of exposure. I laid bare Sophia's hidden debt, more than $200,000, smothered beneath layers of charm and manipulation. I named the years of unpaid favors, the tuition I covered for Marcus, the dinners and vacations I financed silently, while her smile grew brighter and her demands bolder. "This is not just about money," I said, voice raw now. "It's about respect, about finally acknowledging the truth that I have borne alone for too long." The silence was deafening. Sophia's lips parted in shocked disbelief, her carefully constructed mask cracking as eyes darted between her and me. Edward's gaze dropped, the passive enabler exposed beneath the weight of complicity. Marcus looked away, the golden child suddenly uncertain in the harsh light of reality. When I finished, I set the folder down with a quiet finality. From this moment forward, I will no longer be the family's invisible backbone, their silent ATM. No more unpaid favors. No more sacrifice without recognition. I deserve dignity, respect, and boundaries. The words echoed in the stunned silence. Glasses trembled in hesitant hands. Faces flushed with disbelief, shame, or anger. But beneath it all, I felt an ember ignite, a fragile, fierce spark of liberation. This was my champagne moment. The long-awaited victory that wasn't just mine, but a reckoning for us all. Sophia's world unraveled with a terrifying speed that left the room reeling. Family members whispered behind cupped hands, their eyes now sharper, their smiles tinged with doubt and betrayal. Calls buzzed in rapid succession on her phone, Edward's name flashing repeatedly, Marcus pacing anxiously as the weight of the revelation settled on him like a storm cloud. I watched from a distance, a quiet observer as her carefully maintained facade crumbled. Her once confident gaze now flickered with desperation, her voice breaking into tearful apologies that sounded rehearsed and hollow. She promised to repay every penny, to make amends, but the damage was done. Love-bombing tactics followed, gifts left on doorsteps, messages overflowing with flattery and promises to change. But I had already built walls strong enough to hold firm. Liam's steady presence reassured me. He reminded me that boundaries were not walls to keep others out, but shields to protect my dignity. Edward, long the passive enabler, now showed a flicker of shame, his silence heavy with the weight of truth. Pressure from extended family and friends mounted, forcing him to acknowledge the cracks he'd chosen to ignore. Marcus, once blindly loyal, began to question the narratives he'd been fed, his confusion palpable in every hesitant glance. The family's foundation, once seemingly unshakable, trembled under the strain. Financial security, college funds, shared accounts, inherited assets, now felt precarious, threatened by the reckoning I'd ignited. Yet I felt no triumph in their unraveling, only a measured satisfaction that justice was unfolding, that accountability was replacing denial. This was not vengeance, but a necessary reckoning, a painful but essential step toward healing. As the pieces fell apart around them, I stood firm, a quiet force reshaping the story with each breath I took. Sophia's final attempts to regain control were as desperate as they were futile. She enlisted allies, family friends, and distant relatives, who flooded social media and private chats with accusations, painting me as selfish and disloyal. The venom spilled like poison, each post and message designed to isolate and discredit me. Legal threats surfaced, vague and menacing, but I was prepared. With Liam by my side and a lawyer's counsel ready, I faced each attack with calm resolve. Evidence was my armor, truth, my sword. Their attempts to silence me only strengthened my determination. Edward, finally breaking through his long-standing passivity, approached me with tentative apologies. Not empty words, but the beginnings of accountability. It was a fragile olive branch in a fractured landscape, but I accepted it with cautious hope. My boundaries, once invisible, were now clear and unyielding. Sophia's network of influence shrank as her manipulations failed to gain traction, leaving her isolated and exposed. The family's inner circle shifted. Loyalty was no longer a given, but a choice measured against truth and respect. Through it all, I remained centered, my calm a quiet rebellion against the chaos. I had moved beyond victimhood into a place of power, not through bitterness, but through clarity and strength. The final blows to Sophia's control sealed her exile from the family's core, a necessary wound for growth and renewal. Watching the dust settle, I felt the weight begin to lift, a fragile peace taking root where pain had once ruled. This was not the end, but a beginning, a chance to rebuild on my terms. Months later, standing beside Liam, newly married and unburdened, I felt a freedom I had never known. The toxic ties that once strangled me had been severed, replaced by boundaries strong enough to protect and nurture. I nurtured relationships that honored honesty and support, rekindling connections with family members who sought genuine healing. Edward had begun therapy, confronting his role with painful honesty, while Sophia remained estranged, facing the consequences of choices made in shadows. I reflected on my journey, the quiet years of sacrifice, the slow erosion of hope, and the fierce awakening that transformed me from invisible caretaker to empowered truth-teller. The scars remained, but so did the strength they forged. In this new life, I was no longer the family's ATM or scapegoat. I was a woman who had reclaimed her story and her dignity. The future stretched before me, bright and unwritten, filled with the promise of living fully. For me, as Liam's hand found mine, I smiled, soft, confident, free. The past was a shadow behind me, no longer a chain, but a stepping stone to a life defined by respect, love, and self-worth. I was reborn, and this time I was holding the pen,